The entire restaurant laughed when the tray slipped from my hands. Crystal glasses shattered across the marble floor, and champagne splashed over a designer dress worth more than my monthly rent. Maybe if you spent less time daydreaming and more time working, Emily, my manager snapped loud enough for everyone to hear. Heat burned my face. Nobody defended me. Nobody ever did. I dropped to my knees, picking up broken glass while people stared like I was part of the entertainment. Then I noticed him. A man in a black suit sitting alone in the corner. He wasn't laughing. He was watching. His eyes followed every insult, every cruel word, every second of humiliation. Later that night, I walked home through the cold Chicago rain, exhausted after another double shift. My phone buzzed. Another message from my ex. Another threat. Another reminder that no matter how hard I worked, someone always wanted to control me. I quickened my pace. Footsteps echoed behind me. Then a hand grabbed my arm. You think you can ignore me? My ex growled. Fear slammed into my chest. Cars passed. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. Until a black SUV pulled up beside us. The door opened. The same man from the restaurant stepped out. Calm. Silent. Dangerous. My ex laughed. Mind your business. The stranger looked at him for a long second. Then he spoke. You have exactly 3 seconds to let her go. Something in his voice made the air feel colder. My ex hesitated. For the first time all night, I saw fear in someone else's eyes. The stranger stepped closer. Headlights illuminated his face. That's when my ex went pale. Wait, you're Vincent Romano? The most feared man in Chicago gave a slight nod. And what happened next changed my life forever. People only notice you when you make a mistake. I learned that lesson on a cold Thursday night in downtown Chicago. The restaurant was packed. Crystal chandeliers reflected golden light across polished marble floors, and the sound of expensive laughter filled every corner of the room. I balanced a silver tray loaded with champagne flutes and reminded myself to keep smiling. 6 more hours. Then I could go home. 6 more hours until I could check on my little brother, Noah, finish my online coursework, and pretend life wasn't falling apart one overdue bill at a time. At 25 years old, I worked 2 jobs and slept less than 5 hours a night. Exhaustion had become part of my personality. Most customers never noticed. They only saw the uniform. The smile. The waitress. Emily, table 12. My manager's voice snapped through the noise. Try not to embarrass us tonight. A few nearby employees laughed. I laughed too, because sometimes pretending something doesn't hurt is easier than admitting it does. I picked up the tray and crossed the dining room. My feet ached. My shoulders burned. But I kept moving. That was what I always did. Then it happened. A guest stepped backward without looking. My shoulder clipped his arm. The tray tilted. Time slowed. Crystal glasses slipped from the silver surface and crashed onto the marble floor. The sound echoed through the restaurant like a gunshot. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. Champagne splashed across an expensive designer dress. The woman wearing it stared at me in disbelief. Are you serious? She snapped. Heat flooded my face. I'm so sorry. I dropped to my knees and began collecting broken glass. Sorry doesn't fix this, my manager said loudly. Maybe if you paid attention instead of daydreaming. Laughter rippled through the room. Not everyone laughed. But nobody defended me either. That somehow felt worse. I focused on the shattered glass because looking up would have meant seeing their faces. Seeing their judgment. Seeing the way people looked at someone they considered insignificant. Invisible. Then I felt it. The sensation of being watched. Not mocked. Not pitted. Watched. I looked up. A man sat alone at a corner table near the window. Black suit. Dark hair. Calm expression. While everyone else stared at the mess, he stared at me. His face revealed nothing. No amusement. No annoyance. No sympathy. Just attention. For a strange second, the noise around me disappeared. The laughter. The music. The embarrassment. All of it faded beneath the weight of that gaze. Then someone called my name and the moment broke. I lowered my eyes and finished cleaning the floor. When I finally stood, the man was still watching. I had no idea who he was. I had no idea why he seemed different from everyone else in the room. And I definitely had no idea that before the night was over, that stranger would become the most dangerous and important person in my life. Some people go home to families. Some people go home to silence. I belonged to the second group. The wind coming off Lake Michigan felt colder than usual as I stepped out of the restaurant nearly an hour after my shift ended. The streets glistened from an earlier rain, reflecting the city lights like broken pieces of gold scattered across the pavement. My feet hurt. My back hurt. Even my smile hurt. I pulled my coat tighter and started the 3-block walk toward the bus stop. My phone buzzed inside my pocket. I already knew who it was before I looked. Ryan. My ex-boyfriend. 23 missed messages. 4 missed calls. I stared at the screen and felt the familiar knot tighten in my stomach. We had broken up 8 months ago. At least that was what I called it. Ryan preferred to act like the relationship was simply on pause until I changed my mind. Another text appeared. We need to talk. I locked the screen without responding. The city noise swallowed my sigh. I was too tired for another argument. Too tired to explain that no meant no. Too tired to defend decisions that should not require defending. The bus arrived with a hiss of brakes. 20 minutes later, I stepped off near my apartment building on the north side. The neighborhood was not dangerous, but it was not exactly safe either. Most people kept to themselves. I climbed 3 flights of stairs and unlocked the apartment door. The smell of tomato soup greeted me immediately. Noah looked up from the small kitchen table and smiled. That smile alone made the entire day worth surviving. You are late, he said. I know. Bad customers? The usual. He studied me for a second. Noah was only 13, but sometimes he looked at me like he was the older sibling. You look sad. I am just tired. He nodded even though we both knew it was not the truth. I heated leftover soup while he talked about school. A science project. A math test. A teacher who kept mixing up his name. Normal things. Beautiful things. The kind of things that reminded me why I kept working so hard. After dinner, Noah disappeared into his room to finish homework. I sat alone at the tiny kitchen table with a stack of unpaid bills. Rent. Electricity. Internet. Numbers stared back at me like accusations. My chest felt heavy. Then my phone vibrated again. Another unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Instead, I answered. Hello? Silence. For a moment I thought the call had dropped. Then a deep male voice spoke. Calm. Controlled. Familiar. Emily Carter? My fingers tightened around the phone. Yes? There was a brief pause. This is Vincent Romano. My heart skipped. The man from the restaurant. The man who had watched everything. The man whose face I had not been able to forget. I think we need to talk. For 3 full seconds, I forgot how to breathe. Vincent Romano. The name meant nothing and everything at the same time. I knew his face. I knew the way he had watched me from across that restaurant. But I did not know why a man like him would be calling a woman like me. How did you get my number? I asked quietly. The question slipped out before I could stop it. A faint chuckle came through the phone. Not mocking. Not warm. Just surprised. That is your first question? It seems like a reasonable one. Another pause. I asked someone to find it. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the stack of bills. Somehow that answer was both honest and concerning. Why? I asked. Because I wanted to make sure you got home safely. My grip tightened around the phone. Nobody had said something like that to me in a very long time. Not since my parents died. Not since life became a constant cycle of responsibilities and survival. That is not really an answer, I said. No. It is not. His voice remained calm. Controlled. Like every word was carefully chosen before it left his mouth. Then what is the answer? The silence stretched longer this time. Outside, a siren echoed somewhere in the distance. Noah's bedroom door clicked shut down the hallway. The city continued moving while I sat frozen in my tiny kitchen. Finally Vincent spoke. I do not like seeing people treated unfairly. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it sounded impossible. Men like him did not exist. Wealthy strangers did not spend their evenings worrying about waitresses who dropped trays. You do not even know me. I know enough. Something about those 3 words sent a strange chill through me. What does that mean? It means you work too hard. My heart skipped. It means you take care of your younger brother by yourself. It means you have not had a day off in nearly 3 weeks. It means you keep pretending everything is fine when it clearly is not. Every muscle in my body went rigid. How do you know those things? Another pause. This one felt different. More dangerous. I told you, Emily. I asked questions. Fear should have been the first thing I felt. Instead, confusion arrived first. Then frustration. Then something I could not name. Because part of me was angry. But another part of me was wondering why anyone cared enough to ask. Listen, I said carefully. I appreciate your concern, but I do not need rescuing. His answer came immediately. Good. That caught me off guard. Good? I have no interest in rescuing you. The corner of my mouth twitched despite myself. Then why are we having this conversation? For the first time, his voice softened. Only slightly. But enough for me to notice. Because someone is making your life harder than it needs to be. And I would like to know who. His question lingered in the silence long after he stopped speaking. Because someone is making your life harder than it needs to be. And I would like to know who. I stared at the dark kitchen window, seeing my reflection instead of the city beyond it. Tired eyes. Messy hair. A woman holding together a life that always felt one unexpected expense away from falling apart. That is not your problem, I finally said. Maybe not. His voice remained steady. But I asked anyway. I almost smiled. Almost. Most people gave advice. Most people judged. Vincent asked questions. Somehow that felt more dangerous. You do not know me well enough to get involved. You would be surprised. A strange feeling settled in my chest. Not fear. Not exactly. It was the unsettling realization that he had probably learned more about my life in a few hours than some people had learned in years. I think you should stop asking questions about me, I said. Why? Because it is creepy. To my surprise, he laughed. A low sound that lasted only a second. Fair point. For the first time since answering the phone, I relaxed slightly. Then he asked, "Did your manager apologize?" My stomach tightened again. What? The man at the restaurant. My fingers wrapped around the edge of the table. No. I did not think so. Why do you care? I asked. The answer came immediately. Because people reveal their character when they have power over someone who cannot fight back. The room suddenly felt very quiet. I thought about the restaurant. The laughter. The embarrassment. The way nobody had said a word in my defense. That happens everywhere, I said softly. Maybe. Vincent paused. That does not make it acceptable. I did not know how to respond to that. Nobody had ever spoken about my struggles like they mattered. Most people treated them as facts of life. Difficult things to endure. Obstacles to overcome. Vincent sounded offended by them. As if unfairness itself irritated him. The conversation drifted into silence again. Not uncomfortable. Just unexpected. Eventually he spoke. How old is Noah? The question caught me off guard. 13. Does he know how much you sacrifice for him? I looked toward the hallway leading to my brother's room. I try not to let him see it. Then he probably sees it more than you think. The truth of those words hit harder than I wanted to admit. Noah always noticed more than I realized. He noticed every skipped meal. Every extra shift. Every forced smile. Before I could answer, another notification appeared on my screen. Ryan. Another message. My stomach sank. Vincent must have heard the change in my breathing. What happened? He asked. Nothing. Emily. I closed my eyes. It is just someone who does not understand boundaries. Silence. Then his voice became very still. Very calm. Somehow calmer than before. Your former boyfriend? My eyes opened immediately. How do you know about Ryan? Another pause. Longer this time. Because he has been parked outside your building 3 times this week. For a moment, I forgot how to speak. My apartment suddenly felt smaller. The kitchen. The bills. The chipped coffee mug sitting beside me. Everything seemed distant compared to the sentence I had just heard. How do you know that? I asked quietly. Vincent did not answer immediately. Because I pay attention. The calm certainty in his voice unsettled me more than if he had sounded angry. You have been watching my apartment? No. Another pause. But someone informed me after they noticed the same vehicle appearing repeatedly. I rubbed my forehead. My exhaustion was catching up to me. Why would anyone inform you about my life? This time his answer came without hesitation. Because I asked them to let me know if anything seemed unusual. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to be angry. Another part of me was too tired to feel anything except confusion. You do realize that sounds completely insane, right? A faint amusement touched his voice. I have been told that before. Despite myself, I almost laughed. The ridiculousness of the situation collided with the reality of it. Somewhere in Chicago, a powerful stranger had decided to pay attention to my life. Not because he wanted something. Not because he expected anything. Simply because he cared enough to ask questions. I did not know what to do with that. Ryan is not dangerous, I said automatically. The words felt rehearsed. Familiar. Like something I had repeated too many times. Vincent was silent for several seconds. Emily. The way he said my name made me stop. What? People do not spend months ignoring boundaries because they respect them. I looked down at my phone screen. 24 messages now. Another missed call. My stomach twisted. I can handle it. Can you? The question was not cruel. It was not judgmental. Somehow that made it harder to answer. Because the truth was complicated. I had handled it. 4 months. I ignored the calls. Ignored the messages. Avoided places Ryan used to visit. Changed routines. Changed schedules. Changed pieces of my life until avoiding conflict became another full-time job. I do not know, I admitted softly. The silence that followed felt strangely honest. Then Vincent spoke again. Tomorrow is your day off. I blinked. How do you know that? Emily. His voice carried a hint of laughter. At this point, that should not be the surprising part. I shook my head even though he could not see me. You are impossible. Tomorrow, he continued, ignoring the comment, take Noah somewhere nice. I cannot afford somewhere nice. Then allow me to make a suggestion. Suspicion immediately returned. What kind of suggestion? A science museum. Noah likes astronomy. My breath caught. I had never told him that. Noah loved astronomy. He spent hours reading about planets and space missions. How do you know that? I whispered. Vincent remained silent for a moment. When he finally answered, his voice had softened. Because your brother deserves to smile more often. And for reasons I could not explain, those words stayed with me long after the call ended. The next morning, I woke up thinking the phone call had been a dream. Then I saw the Science Museum tickets sitting on my kitchen counter. 2 tickets. No note. No explanation. Just 2 perfectly printed admission passes for Saturday morning. I stared at them while coffee brewed in the background. My apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of traffic outside. For several seconds, I simply stood there trying to decide whether I should be impressed or concerned. Emily? Noah appeared in the hallway rubbing sleep from his eyes. Then he saw the tickets. His entire face lit up. Are those real? I laughed softly. I think so. He grabbed one and stared at it like it was made of gold. The Adler Planetarium? His voice cracked with excitement. We are actually going? Watching him smile felt like watching sunlight break through storm clouds. For months, every extra dollar had gone toward rent, groceries, or bills. Fun had become a luxury we could not afford. Looks like we are, I said. Noah hugged me before running back toward his room. I stood there holding my coffee and felt something strange. Relief. Genuine relief. Hours later, we stepped into the museum beneath a bright blue Chicago sky. Noah practically bounced from one exhibit to another. Space capsules. Interactive displays. Telescope demonstrations. His excitement filled every room we entered. I found myself smiling more than I had in weeks. Maybe months. For a few hours, life felt normal. Then my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I already knew who it was. Hello? How is the future astronaut? Vincent asked. I glanced across the room where Noah was reading a display about Mars. You somehow managed to make his entire year. A brief silence followed. Good. There was satisfaction in that single word. Nothing more. Nothing less. You really did not have to do this, I said. I know. Then why did you? Through the phone, I heard the faint sound of traffic and distant voices. Vincent seemed to consider the question. Because every child deserves a good memory. I looked at Noah again. His smile. His excitement. The happiness he tried so hard to hide whenever money became tight. My chest tightened unexpectedly. Thank you, I whispered. Another pause. Then Vincent asked quietly, Emily, has Ryan contacted you today? The warmth of the moment faded instantly. I looked down at my phone. 7 unread messages. 3 missed calls. My stomach sank. Yes. The silence on the other end became very still. Then Vincent spoke. I was afraid you were going to say that. The rest of the afternoon should have been perfect. Noah was excited. The museum was incredible. Families laughed around us while children pointed at planets hanging from the ceiling. But Vincent's last words refused to leave my mind. I was afraid you were going to say that. When the call ended, I slipped my phone back into my pocket and tried to focus on Noah. I really did. Yet every few minutes I found myself wondering why Vincent seemed more concerned about Ryan than I was. Or maybe the truth was worse. Maybe he was concerned because he saw something I had spent months trying to ignore. By the time we returned home, the sun had already started sinking behind the Chicago skyline. Noah talked nonstop about black holes, astronauts, and the possibility of life on other planets. His enthusiasm was contagious. For the first time in a long while, our apartment felt lighter. Happier. Then I opened the front door. A bouquet of flowers sat on the floor just inside the entrance. My smile vanished instantly. Noah noticed my expression. "What is wrong?" I stared at the card attached to the flowers. I already knew who had sent them before I even picked it up. "Ryan. Thinking about you." The knot in my stomach returned immediately. "Emily?" Noah asked again. I forced a smile. "It is nothing." But it was not nothing. Because I had never told Ryan where I lived after moving apartments 6 months earlier. I quickly carried the flowers to the trash bin before Noah could ask more questions. My hands trembled the entire time. That evening I double-checked the door lock twice. Then 3 times. Before bed, I checked my phone again. 11 unread messages now. Some apologetic. Some emotional. Some asking me to respond. I deleted every one of them. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. "Vincent." I answered before the second ring. "How did you know?" I asked. Silence greeted me. Then his calm voice arrived. "Know what?" "The flowers." The pause that followed felt different. Sharper. More focused. "Flowers were delivered?" My heart skipped. "How did you know it was flowers?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Because someone informed me there was a delivery outside your building." I leaned against the kitchen counter. "Vincent, who exactly are these people that keep informing you about my life?" A faint sigh came through the phone. "People I trust." That is not an answer. "No," he admitted. "It is not." For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then his voice softened. "Emily, I need you to answer one question honestly." Something in his tone made me straighten. "What question?" The silence lasted only a heartbeat. "Did Ryan know your new address before today?" The question hit harder than I expected. I stared at the dark apartment window while the city lights flickered beyond the glass. "No," I said quietly. "Ryan never knew this address." The silence on the other end of the line lasted several seconds. Long enough for my pulse to quicken. Long enough for my imagination to start filling in possibilities I did not want to consider. "That is what I thought," Vincent finally said. His voice remained calm, but something underneath it had changed. It sounded colder. More focused. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means someone gave him information he should not have." I sank into a kitchen chair and rubbed my temples. My head hurt. The entire situation felt unreal. A week ago my biggest concern had been paying the electric bill. Now I was having late-night conversations with a mysterious man who seemed to know everything about my life. "Vincent, who are you?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he answered with a question of his own. "Why are you asking now?" I looked toward Noah's bedroom. The apartment was quiet. Safe. Yet somehow I no longer felt completely at ease. Because normal people do not have eyes everywhere. A faint chuckle reached my ear. I never claimed to be normal. Somehow that answer bothered me more than if he had denied it. The next morning I arrived at the restaurant 20 minutes early. I wanted a quiet start to the day. Instead, I walked into tension so thick it felt visible. Employees stood in small groups whispering. My manager looked pale. Even the hostess seemed distracted. Something had happened. "What is going on?" I asked. Nobody answered immediately. Finally, one of the servers leaned closer. "Corporate is here." My stomach sank. Corporate visits were never good news. They usually meant inspections, budget cuts, or someone getting fired. I tied my apron and tried to focus on work. An hour later, the general manager gathered the staff together. His voice shook slightly as he spoke. "There will be some leadership changes effective immediately." Everyone exchanged confused looks. My manager's face turned completely white. 15 minutes later, his office was empty. His nameplate had already been removed from the door. I stood frozen beside the service station. None of it made sense. The timing felt impossible. The same manager who had spent months humiliating employees was suddenly gone. No warning. No explanation. As the lunch rush began, my phone vibrated once. A single message. Unknown number. I already knew who it was before opening it. The text contained only 6 words. "Sometimes unfair people face consequences." I stared at the screen. Then I slowly looked up toward the crowded restaurant around me. For the first time since meeting Vincent Romano, a realization settled into my chest. Whatever world he belonged to was far larger and far more powerful than I had ever imagined. That realization stayed with me for days. No matter how hard I tried to focus on work, on bills, on keeping life normal for Noah, I could not stop thinking about Vincent Romano. People like him were supposed to exist in newspapers and headlines. Not in my phone contacts. Not in my daily life. Yet somehow he had become part of both. 3 days after my manager disappeared, I finished another long shift and stepped outside into the cool evening air. The city glowed beneath a blanket of clouds. Traffic moved slowly through downtown Chicago, headlights stretching into the distance like rivers of light. My phone buzzed. This time it was not Vincent. It was Noah. His voice sounded excited. "Emily, there is someone here." I immediately stopped walking. "What do you mean someone is there?" "A man. He brought pizza." Every protective instinct inside me woke up instantly. "Noah, do not open the door for strangers." I already did. I closed my eyes. "Please tell me you are joking." "He is nice." My heart nearly stopped. "Who is he?" Before Noah could answer, another voice came through the phone. Calm. Familiar. "Good evening, Emily." I froze in the middle of the sidewalk. "Vincent?" "Your brother informed me that I was apparently under investigation." Despite my anxiety, I laughed. An actual laugh. The first genuine one in weeks. "You cannot just show up at my apartment." "That is fair." "It is also strange." "Also fair." I shook my head and started walking faster toward home. 20 minutes later, I opened the apartment door and found Noah explaining astronomy theories to Vincent like they had known each other for years. The sight stopped me cold. Vincent sat at our tiny kitchen table wearing a dark jacket, listening with complete attention while Noah enthusiastically described distant galaxies. Not pretending to listen. Actually listening. The apartment suddenly felt too small for the moment unfolding inside it. Vincent looked up as I entered. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then Noah smiled. "I told him about the telescope I want someday." Vincent nodded thoughtfully. A reasonable goal. I stared at both of them. Nothing about the scene made sense. Yet somehow it felt natural. Comfortable. Safe. Later, after Noah went to bed, Vincent stood near the window overlooking the city. The silence between us felt different now. Easier. "Why are you doing this?" I asked quietly. He looked at me for a long moment before answering. "Because someone should have helped you sooner." Emotion tightened my throat unexpectedly. I turned away before he could see it. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the glass. Inside, for the first time in years, the weight I carried every day felt a little lighter. And standing there beside the most mysterious man I had ever met, I realized something that scared me far more than anything else. I was beginning to trust him.